We move on. 1 p.m. Eastern, a real fascinating game. The Detroit Lions, 1-1. 0-0 on the road at the Minnesota Vikings, 1-1, 1-0 at home. I would really like to point out these teams that are facing a road game for the first time this year. And so last year the Lions averaged 19.1 points per game. After 2 years, they're averaging 35.5. What, Andy, do you see this continuing? Is it ridiculous, or do you see this possibly continuing?
So a bunch of it was, week one, a lot of it was in low win probability time, like not quite garbage time at the end because it got a little close, but some of it was against Prevent there. They were down decently. And then last week, that was just a good matchup for them, and they looked good. And honestly, Sun God, that is if you got him in like your 6th or 7th round of the fantasy league, you're probably doing well. That guy is putting up points. He's putting up numbers. God, he's good. Everyone thought Swift was going to be a big part of what carries his offense. It's St. Brown right now. It's been a fun team to watch, and they get to go indoors again. This is a higher total. This is one I talked about Sunday night. There was 51s that I regret not betting. So I said, I bet this gets to 53 in a hurry, and it's surpassed that at this point. So congrats anyone who took an early number. I still think it's maybe a bit too low, and this is probably a decent buy low spot on Minnesota after looking pretty bad against maybe the best team in the NFC. And I say that because Tampa Bay is not healthy, nor have they shown me they can stay healthy. Eagles might be number one in the NFC power rankings right now. That was a tough ask. And Minnesota still moved the ball. They moved the ball numerous times. You just had a good secondary, and Kirk Cousins in primetime throwing a bunch of turnovers. Like, Minnesota probably deserved a few more points than that one. They racked up a decent amount of yards. Irv Smith dropped a sure touchdown pretty much. Minnesota wasn't as bad as they seemed in that game, but clearly they were still overmatched. The Eagles are very good. The Eagles would have scored more points if they needed to. And Minnesota laying 6 is a little tough. But that's the lean here. Lean towards favorite and over in a divisional game, just because it is kind of a bad matchup. The Lions secondary probably struggles with, Irv and Thielen and Justin Jefferson. And at the same time, I don't know what I can say nice about the Minnesota defense. The secondary looked pretty poor at times, missing tackles, letting the Eagles kind of do whatever they want. This isn't the same offense. I don't fear Goff like I fear Jalen Hurts, but probably still an overlook here. And it's just because I was hoping we'd open a little lower on Minnesota. I was hoping they'd overreact and we'd get some silly number on them and be able to snap up a 4 or something, but that number's probably about right. And the Lions, it's a frisky offense that just don't quit. I think you can bet this over, and when it's at 42 points in the first half, you can sit and take an over 27 in the second half and cash that too, because the Lions just they don't take drives off on offense. It'll be a fun game. I'm excited to watch this one for sure.
Vikings open up at -6 now, 5.5 at Pinnacle. Pinnacle waits. Pinnacle waits to drop their lines. They don't put their early action. They're not like, Bet Online and other books that give you real early looks before the games go for the following week. 53 right now. It opened at 52. 53 right now. So let's take a look at where the cash lies in this one. 5,686 tickets in. You have 30% of the tickets and 35% of the cash on the Minnesota Vikings. Then you have 76% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on the over. 98% of the cash. So now averaging 35.5 points per game. We have not seen them play on the road, and clearly they're fighting for Campbell. As you said, they don't take drives off. That's apparent. Lions coming off that 36-27 win at home over the Commanders. First time they'd been a favorite since 2020. They led 22-0 at the half. Jared Goff was 20 of 34 for 256 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. There is talk on sports radio right now when people talk about Waddle and Tyreek that next year they'll say that the Detroit Lions have the best 1-2 receivers in the NFL, which I was like, come on, really? But look, Amon-Ra St. Brown has been spectacular. 9 catches for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran twice for 68 yards. First player in league history to have 6 straight games with at least 8 catches and a touchdown. Tied the NFL record with 8+ catches in 8 straight games. DeAndre Swift, 5 carries for 56 yards, caught 2 passes for 31 yards, and a touchdown. Jamal Williams, 12 carries for 53 yards. And the Lions defense swarmed Carson Wentz. Aiden Hutchinson, 3 of the Lions, 5 sacks. The Lions hit Wentz 11 times. So you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4th pick, I believe, out of the USC. And then you have Aiden Hutchinson, the number 2 overall pick. What you're seeing is these draft picks, these high draft. Now, I know that Amon-Ra was just a great draft. Yeah. But they're starting to show up. So Hutchinson joined Julius Peppers and Chip Banks. Only those 2 guys. Julius in 2002, Chip in 1982, his top 10 picks to have 3 sacks within the first 2 games of their career. He's the 4th youngest player with a 3-sack game. Vernon Maxwell, Nick Bosa, and Greg Townsend were just a little younger than him. Will Harris had an interception. The Lions did all of this without starting offensive lineman Jonah Jackson and Frank Ragnow. They were inactive, as was the team's top cornerback, Amani Oruware. So you have Oruware questionable and Melifonwu questionable. Those are 2 big pieces at cornerback. I think this is a great buy low spot on the Vikings. Let's go back to their spread right now. Again, you have 30% of the tickets, 35% of the cash. The only question you'd have to ask yourself now is, can you get better than the 5.5? In saying that, we had, where is it? Our guy Birdie says, after that first scripted TD in the Green Bay game, the Vikings have scored 23 points over 7.5 quarters. I know you know this Minnesota team inside and out. Before I break down the Minnesota side of things, which isn't very long, you've touched on most of it, but what do you think about what Birdie's saying after that first scripted TD in the Green Bay game, 23 points?
That's probably the reason I'm passing in this game. I have the thing I've liked the least so far about the 2022 Minnesota Vikings has been the thing that everybody harped on as being the biggest positive coming into the season. I don't love the play calling. I don't think Kevin O'Connell has just unlocked this offense and there's a lot of first down runs, even when they were down 3 scores. They get the ball back with short time and it's a first down run off tackle with Dalvin Cook. Like, the urgency wasn't there. It was very odd to see the sequencing of the plays. It just feels like Mike Zimmer never left at certain points. And yeah, I thought this offense would be a lot better. So it's a hard pass on this game. Even with the over, I worry that Minnesota, even against a lesser defense, is still going to just go with this offense. It's not using their strengths to a T. I haven't loved what I've seen from Kevin O'Connell right now.
Yeah, I think I got a little carried away with the way he kept Jefferson away from Jair Alexander in week 1, but I think that's
I love that part of it, but other than that, yeah, it's been mildly disappointing. It still can turn around. It's early in the season, but just be a big opportunity for it. You can beat these corners.
Sammy Comer says Lions and no on the road and off a win. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a tough spot too. Coming off a win, heading into a divisional road game. Again, divisional games, I enjoy taking the dogs, but 6 points, 5.5, not a ton, especially with a nice high total here. Just a pass for me.
Vikings on the short week after that 24-7 loss to Philadelphia. Andy talked about how good Philadelphia might be. Cousins was, and we'll talk more about that when we break down that game, but Cousins was 27-46, 221 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Jefferson, 6 catches for 48 yards a week after he had 184 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in the win against Green Bay at home. What about Dalvin Cook? Andy, 6 carries for 17 yards. They had 3 rushing first downs in the entire game.
Are there any good running backs this year? I'm trying to think of like your top 5 running back performances of the whole season in the whole league. Like Saquon had a real nice week 1. It's weird. It just turned into an odd season for me for some of these top running backs. We're not seeing these these high-end guys do it a lot, and I don't understand why. It's probably just a small sample size thing, but Dalvin looked good, I think, and he looked good last year, and a lot of it was the scheme. They had this nice zone running scheme. I just haven't seen a lot of a lot of success out of him yet this year. I think it's probably yet to come, and it sucks that it's a short week to try to prepare for this. But hopefully, if you're a Minnesota fan or you want to back them at the 5.5, you got to hope O'Connell has some way to try to get him, useful in this game.
I would love to get a first half at 3.
Yeah.
If I could get a first half at 3, I would bet it immediately. It's 3.5 right now at -105. I also like the Vikings. I think this is the opportunities that we lust for, and that's a buy low opportunity against a team that you can sell high in the Lions. I want the Vikings here. I want the Viking here. Is there any concern that Harrison Smith, he was evaluated for the concussion after the game? Is there any concern that he might not be in?
There is, and also even if he's healthy, he looked kind of bad. He's been high end for many years, and that doesn't last forever. He missed some tackles. He got roasted once. He had that terrible attempt at a tackle near the goal line. He didn't look great at times. So I'm just kind of out on this Minnesota defense at times.
Now, I know we talk about your favorite team is just whoever you're betting on, and not to have allegiances, but you are very close to this football team. Did that 24-7 loss? Are you soured on this group right now because of how close you are to this football team?
No, I haven't been a fan for years. It is funny. I had to grab something from the grocery store late on a couple of evenings ago. It was Monday, and there was nobody working, and there's some people, and obviously I live in Minnesota, and a bunch of people who were working at the grocery store had congregated and were talking about the game, and you could hear them like, there's no way the Vikings lose. The Eagles have one weapon. They'll just stop A.J. Brown and we'll be fine. So be interesting to go talk to those guys again today. But there was high hopes after that Green Bay game, and I don't know. I thought the offense would look a lot better. The defense did about what I expected, but that is the main concern here for me. If as a close to the team guy, the offense was supposed to take a big step forward with this McVay tree guy and Kevin O'Connell, and just haven't seen it.
I wasn't that high on the Eagles after the way the Lions kind of came back on them. I could understand the talk about letting the foot off the gas, but when it came down to game time, it was 50-50 for the tickets, 50-50, but 70% of cash was on the Eagles. When you see that opportunity and the sharps and the pros and the syndicates are hammering aside, just go with them. That was my thought process. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with them, and that's what I did. Okay, that's first quarter. Okay, Alfonso, I hear you. And then Birdie says, how are we buying low on Mini at -6? I guess that's fair. I mean, it's 5.5 now, and by looking at it right now, Birdie, with the amount of tickets that are on Detroit, 70% of the tickets, 65% of the cash, would it surprise you to see a 5? Could you see a 4.5 if you did?
It doesn't take much to move down to a 5,
Yeah.
Not super key numbers.
Yeah. Res Mob in the house says it's a classic Kirk Cousins bounce back spot. He does it every season. Mark Jacobs still likes the Vikings to win the division. Okay. Well, let's move on. I'm interested in the Vikings. Interested in the Vikings, and the total just seems like something I don't want to be involved in at this point. But if I was to get involved in the total, I think I would prefer a first half. But I guess I take that back. If I do think the Vikings are in control, I think they're going to want to have long drives. Okay, we move on. You're staying off this spot, or do you want the over in Lions Vikings?
No, I'm staying off this. Too many questions. Okay. Not enough answers.
We move on.